If you're brand new to ESO, returning after years away, or even starting over on PC like I did, then this guide is for you. I've restarted from scratch before, so I know exactly what it's like logging in with nothing, from no champion points, to no mythics, to no gold, to no gear, to no crafter, just nothing. And after going through that grind myself, I've figured out what actually matters, and more importantly, what doesn't. But here's the truth. A lot of beginner guides overwhelm you. They'll throw 50 different systems at you and tell you everything is important, but it's not. There are things you should prioritize immediately, and there are things you can completely ignore until much later. So in this guide, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I would start a brand new account today. Not how to become rich overnight, not how to skip progression, because you can't. ESO is an MMO. Grinding is part of the game. The goal isn't to avoid the grind, the goal is to make every single hour of grinding count. Everything you do should have a purpose. If you learn that mindset, you'll progress faster than 95% of new players. So, let's get into it. Step number 1. Decide what you want to play. Before you even worry about leveling, figure out what you're trying to build. Ask yourself, do I want a PvP? Do I want a PvE? Do I want to heal? Tank? Play solo? Maybe you just want to quest and explore. Whatever your answer is, that answer determines literally everything else. Your race, your class, your gear, your champion points, your mythic, everything. One of the biggest mistakes new players make is leveling a random character to 50 only to realize they don't actually enjoy playing it. Now they're either forcing themselves to continue or starting completely over. Spend 5 minutes deciding what sounds fun, it'll save you dozens of hours later. Step number 2. Get to level 50. Now it's time to level. There are 2 ways to do this. The first is the normal progression route. Run dungeons, play the main story, quest, learn your class. This is a bit slower, but it gives you something extremely valuable. Skill points. And trust me, you're going to need a lot of skill points. The second option, if you already know what you're doing, is to power level. The fastest method is running Black Rose Prison, specifically round 2, on repeat. People have been using it for years because the experience is incredible. If your only goal is getting to level 50, this is easily one of the fastest methods. But, and this is where new players mess up, level 50 doesn't actually mean much. You still need sky shards, you still need skill points, you still need guild skills lines, and you still need gear. So don't make the mistake of thinking that the game starts at level 50. Level 50 is simply your first milestone. So, get sky shards as you go. This is something experienced players do without even thinking. Every time you're traveling somewhere, grab nearby sky shards, especially if you're on PC. Install the sky shards add-on. It's one of the highest value things you can do while leveling. Why? Because you're already traveling there. You're already questing there, you're already exploring, so why not grab the free skill points while you're there? That's one less thing you'll have to come back and grind later on. That's the mindset I want you guys to have throughout this guide. Everything should have a purpose. Every activity should move multiple systems forward. So, don't ignore skill points. I don't care how fast you level, if you hit level 50 with no skill points, your build is going to feel terrible. You won't have your passives, you won't have your utility, you'll constantly be wondering why everyone else's character feels stronger than yours. It's because they invested into their character, not just their level. So that's why I recommend stacking everything together. Run dungeons, complete the main story, collect sky shards, progress multiple systems at once, because that's how experienced players level new characters. Not by tunnel visioning one thing, but by stacking progression. And that's something you're going to hear me say a lot throughout this guide, because that's honestly the biggest secret to progressing quickly in ESO. Not finding one magical XP farm, but making every hour count toward multiple goals. Getting into part 2. 160 CP, your first builds, and building your foundation. So, you've hit level 50. First off, congratulations. A lot of people think this is where the game begins. They're only half right. The game doesn't begin at level 50, it begins at 160 champion points. That's your next goal. Not 300, not 500, not 1000, 160. Why? Because once you hit 160 champion points, every piece of gear that drops is at the maximum item level. That means anything you farm from this point on can stay with you forever. Before 160, don't even waste your time farming perfect gear. You're going to outlevel it anyway. Just wear whatever gets you through content. Your real grind starts at 160. Don't stress about low champion points. One thing I see all the time is people saying, man, that guy is 2,500 CP, I'll never catch up. Guys, relax. Champion points matter, but they aren't everything. Honestly, once you're somewhere around 900 to 1,200 CP, you're already in a really good spot. You'll have most of the important passives, enough slottables to build around, and if you actually understand mechanics, you'll compete just fine. Sure, someone at 1,500 CP has a little more flexibility. Someone at 2,500 CP has more options. But the difference isn't nearly as massive as people think. Knowledge will beat champion points far more often than champion points beat knowledge. So don't get discouraged. So, the second you hit 160, you make your first purchase. You find a crafter. Seriously, ask your guild, ask zone chat, ask a friend. Most veteran players are more than happy to help a new player out because right now you own nothing. No trial gear, no dungeon gear, no mythics, nada. Crafted gear bridges that gap. It gives you something strong enough to immediately begin farming the gear you actually want. So, my recommended starter sets. For PvE, I recommend Tideborn, Wildstalker, and Order's Wrath. Those two sets are fantastic starter options. They're crafted, they're accessible, and they'll carry you while you farm stronger sets. Eventually, you'll want to move into things like Noarca, but don't worry about perfected versions immediately. Just go farm normal, get the set, use it. Perfected gear is something you can chase later. But remember, progress first, optimization later. For PvP, if that is your goal, don't overcomplicate it. You don't need 10 different mythics. You don't need every trial set. You don't need every arena weapon. You need a functional build. For newer players, I recommend things like Trial by Fire, Mechanical Acuity, Order's Wrath. All three of those are simple, strong, easy to obtain. Then, as you improve, you slowly replace those pieces with better gear. Don't let perfection stop your progression. Then, you get a PvE build and a PvP build. Even if you only care about PvP, make a PvE build. And even if you only care about PvE, make a PvP build. Why? Because ESO rewards players for doing a little bit of everything. Run your battleground daily, run your dungeon daily, earn experience from both. You'll progress faster than someone who only does one activity all day. Again, everything should stack, everything should have a purpose. So, your daily routine should look something like this. Once you're level 50, you should start doing your Undaunted dailies. Now, if you're brand new, don't worry if you can't clear veteran DLC dungeons yet. Nobody expects you to. Run them on normal, that's completely fine. Focus on consistency. Run your base game veteran pledges if you're comfortable. Run the DLC pledge on normal if you need to. You'll still walk away with plenty of Undaunted keys, and those keys become incredibly valuable later when you're farming monster sets. Another tip I'll add is get your shoulder pieces before your monster helm, because once you get your monster helm, the drop on the shoulders decreases because it goes off of both. So, that being said, get your shoulder piece first and your monster set or your monster helm later. So, getting into monster sets. Monster sets are one of the biggest upgrades your build will ever get. Once you've crafted your starter gear, your next objective should be getting your first monster set. Some great beginner options include Bloodspawn and Marsalok, even Balors. The exact monster set you choose depends on your build, but the important thing is simply getting one. That extra 2-piece bonus is a huge jump in power. And don't forget about Tamriel Tombs. This is something newer players overlook. The Tamriel Tombs reward track gives you a lot of useful resources, including Undaunted keys later in the reward track. So while you're already playing the game, completing dungeons, running content, you're also earning more rewards on top of everything else. That's basically free progression. Take advantage of it. Now, ask yourself, what kind of player do I actually want to become? Because this is where ESO branches. If you're going PvE, life is honestly pretty simple. There's a clear meta, farm your sets, optimize your rotation, improve your DPS, done. PvP, that's a completely different beast. PvP is constant experimentation. You're changing sets, trying new combinations, adjusting traits, swapping skills, learning matchups. Your build evolves constantly. Neither one is better, they're just very different. Personally, I actually recommend new players spend some time doing PvE first, not because PvP is bad, but because PvE naturally gives you a massive collection of gear. By the time you decide to jump into PvP, you'll already own half the sets you need. That's a huge advantage. Also want to add Overland is better now. Another thing worth mentioning, it's become much more rewarding than it used to be. So if you're someone who enjoys questing, exploring, playing solo, that's completely viable now. Not everyone has to chase trials or PvP. Figure out what you enjoy, then build around it. That's kind of the entire point I'm making here. So, build your foundation. Right now, don't worry about having the strongest build on YouTube. Don't worry about having perfect parses. Don't worry about leaderboard scores. Focus on building your account, because everything you're doing right now, crafted gear, monster sets, champion points, guild skill lines, traits, mythics, it's all building the foundation you'll use for years. Veteran players aren't strong because they found one secret build. They're strong because they've built an account over time. And that's exactly what you're doing. So, getting into part 3. Guild skill lines, mythics, and how to build your account. So, at this point you've hit 160 champion points. You've got some crafted gear, and hopefully you started figuring out whether you enjoy PvE, PvP, or just questing around Tamriel. Now we're going to start working on something that's honestly more important than your gear. We're going to start building your account, because gear comes and goes, the meta changes, new sets get added, but the things we're about to unlock are going to benefit every character you make. So, unlocking your guild skill lines. As soon as you can, I want you to unlock these 3 guild skill lines. Mage's Guild, Fighter's Guild, Psijic Order. Even if you don't need the abilities right now, unlock them. Because once they're unlocked, they can start progressing while you're doing everything else. That's what this guide is all about. Doing one activity and getting 5 different rewards from it. So, Mage's Guild. The Mage's Guild is one of the easiest to level. All you're doing is collecting lore books. If you're on PC, download the lore books add-on. It'll put every lore book on your map and save you a ridiculous amount of time. Personally, it took me around 3 to 4 hours to finish my Mage's Guild. It's not exactly exciting, that's for sure, but it's also not nearly as bad as people make it sound. My advice, don't go out of your way every single time you see a lore book. Instead, when you're already in the zone collecting sky shards, grab the lore books too. Now you're leveling your Mage's Guild while also earning skill points. That's efficient progression. So, Fighter's Guild. This one levels by killing undead and Daedra. If you want to level it quickly, go farm Skyreach Catacombs. It's one of the best places to knock this out while also granting tons of experience. Again, one activity, multiple rewards, you're leveling, you're farming champion points, you're leveling Fighter's Guild, you're probably making some gold, and everything's stacking at once. Psijic Order. The Psijic Order is probably the most tedious of the 3. There's really no shortcut here. I do prefer it over Mage's Guild. I feel like Mage's Guild is a little bit more tedious, a little bit longer. This one you just complete the quest, and as long as you complete the quest as soon as possible, like just, you know, straight grind, it really only takes about an hour to 2 hours to finish, so it's not hard. But you are going to spend a lot of that time traveling around Tamriel, closing time breaches, so that's exactly why I'm telling you to start training your mount every single day. Having a fast mount makes the Psijic grind dramatically easier. Trust me. You will thank yourself later. So, mount training. Speaking of the mounts, please do not spend crowns leveling your mount. Train it every day. It's free, and it's honestly much faster now than it used to be. If you're wondering what to prioritize, always level speed first. Every single character. Speed saves you more time than anything else in the game. Once speed is finished, start leveling inventory. Inventory is permanent quality of life. More bag space means longer farming sessions. Fewer trips to town and more gold every time you play. Stamina, honestly, leave it for last. Unless PvP is your main focus, it's not nearly as important. Later on, you'll unlock champion point perks that make mount stamina much less of an issue outside of combat. Now it's time for your first mythic. Once you've built your foundation, it's time for one of the biggest upgrades in ESO, your first mythic. To do that, you'll need antiquities. Head to Western Skyrim, talk to the antiquarian, unlock scrying, unlock excavation, and now here's the leveling path I recommend. Go to Artaeum first. Stay there until roughly level 5 or 6, constantly redoing the same ones over and over and over again. It's very boring, very tedious, but after that, travel through the starter zones. Complete all of the green leads, then the blue leads, then the purple leads. Repeat that process throughout the starter zones until you hit level 7. Once you hit level 7, congratulations. You can now start farming mythics. So, which mythic should you get? This depends entirely on the type of player you decide to become. If your focus is PvE, I almost always recommend Oak and Soul Reap. It's incredibly beginner friendly, one skill bar, less bar swapping. You can spend more time learning boss mechanics instead of worrying about juggling 2 bars and 10 different abilities. It's an amazing mythic for learning the game. Now, if your goal is PvP, I'd recommend Torque of the Last Alien King. This mythic is fantastic for newer PvP players because it simplifies gearing. It gives you a huge amount of weapon and spell damage, excellent resource recovery, and solid damage mitigation, in exchange for disabling your 5-piece bonus. That sounds scary at first, but honestly it lets you focus on what actually matters. Learning positioning, learning your class, learning resource management, learning armor weights, instead of stressing over whether you're wearing the perfect meta setup. For someone just getting into PvP, it's incredibly valuable. I still use Torque. Like, some Torque builds are just really good. Okay, so now we build for the content you're playing. One mistake I see all the time, someone copies a build they saw on YouTube, then they take it into completely different content. Okay, like PvP build's not going to work in PvE. Okay, it's just not how ESO works. A trial build isn't designed for solo arenas, an infinite archive build isn't designed for trials, a PvP build isn't designed for dungeons. Every type of content has its own meta, its own strengths, its own priorities, and if you're doing trials, build for the damage. If you're doing solo arenas, give yourself a little more survivability. Personally, I'll swap an extra healing like Vigor or Coagulating Blood on my Dragonite, and even switch my Mundus from the Thief to the Lady if I need a little more tankiness. If I'm running Infinite Archive, I'm building around status effects and survivability because that's what the content rewards. Understand why a build works, don't just copy it. So, the biggest secret to ESO. By now you've probably noticed something. Everything we've talked about overlaps. You're collecting sky shards, you're grabbing lore books, you're leveling guild skill lines, you're earning champion points, you're farming gear, you're getting undaunted keys, you're making gold, you're researching traits, you're unlocking mythics. None of these systems exist by themselves. The best ESO players don't grind one thing at a time. They stack progression. That's honestly the biggest secret in this entire guide. Every time you log in, ask yourself one question. How can I make this activity progress multiple things at once? If you start thinking like that, you'll progress faster than almost every new player in this game, because everything you do has a purpose. So, part 4. Traits, gold, champion points, and building wealth. At this point, you've built a solid foundation. You've got your guild skill line started, you've got your first mythic, you've got crafted gear. Now it's time to start turning your account into something that's actually sustainable. But here's the thing, anyone can copy a build. Not everyone can build an account. The players who seem to always have gold, always have the newest builds, always have every mythic, is because they built their account correctly from the beginning. So, research your traits. This is probably one of the most overlooked systems in ESO. Every single time you get a piece of gear, ask yourself one question. Do I have this trait researched? If the answer is no, research it. Now, I don't think every trait deserves the same priority. Research the traits you're actually going to use first. If you're a PvE player, prioritize things like Divines on the body armor and Bloodthirsty on the jewelry. For weapons, if you're playing an Arcanist, Charged is incredibly valuable. For most other classes, Precise is a great starting point. On your back bar, I almost always recommend an infused weapon with a weapon spell damage enchantment. It's a simple setup that gives you a noticeable damage increase for most PvE builds. If you're mainly interested in PvP, your priorities change. Focus on traits like Impenetrable, Reinforced, Infused, Protected. The reason this matters is because eventually you'll unlock Transmutation. Once you've researched the trait, you can reconstruct or transmute gear into exactly what you need. That's when your builds really start coming together. Daily crafting writs. Let's talk about crafting writs. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't even do them every day, and honestly I don't even really do them at all. But that doesn't mean they're bad. They're actually one of the best long-term gold makers in the game. You get gold, materials, surveys, red vouchers, and those red vouchers can be exchanged for all kinds of valuable items. If you're looking for a reliable source of income, daily writs are absolutely worth doing. But here's how I recommend making gold. Gold is something every new player struggles with. The good news? Making gold really isn't that complicated once you understand the economy. One of the biggest things I recommend is joining a trading guild. Now, some trading guilds charge weekly dues, 20,000 gold, maybe a little more, and I know, when you're brand new, that sounds expensive, but later on, you will realize it's one of the best investments you can make, because access to a good trader means access to thousands of buyers, and the more you sell, well, the more money you make. Here's a tip for selling too. Learn what people actually buy. A perfect example of this is during White Stakes Mayhem. PvP has become incredibly popular during those times. Players start buying PvP sets like crazy. Sets like Vicious Death and Dark Convergence. If you've been earning alliance points, you can spend those AP on coffers, get the right trait, list it in your guild trader, and suddenly you're making tens of thousands of gold from a single item. Back on console, I'd wake up to mail after mail after mail, 100,000 gold, another 100,000, another 100,000. Eventually that turns into millions. The point isn't that you have to flip those exact sets forever. The point is to understand supply and demand. Watch what people are buying, farm what people need, and sell it. That's how you build wealth in ESO. So, inventory management. Another thing new players underestimate: inventory space. As soon as your mount speed is maxed, start upgrading your mount's inventory. The more inventory you have, the longer you can farm, the less time you spend running back to town, the more loot you bring home, and that directly translates into more gold. Don't ignore it, it's one of the best quality of life upgrades in the game. Also want to add too, if you are a builder like me, it gives you more access to builds. You can carry more builds and run more builds. Also want to add here that you don't stop getting your mythics and gear and stuff like that, like just because you got your first build. You continue grinding those out and as you go. I mean, you don't got to do it like as soon as possible because you do have a build, but it helps you later down the line to have multiple options. Champion points don't matter. You'll want to get to like 1500 CP, but realistically like 900 to like 1000 CP, you get enough for like 4 slottables and your like most of your passives, the ones that matter the most anyways. And don't compare yourself to content creators. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see new players make. They watch a YouTube video, someone's hitting crazy numbers, destroying people in PvP, soloing difficult content, and they think, I want that. And that's completely fine. But what you don't see is the tens of thousands of hours behind that gameplay, the farming, the champion points, the gear, the practice, the failed builds, the testing. Nobody wakes up and becomes an in-game player overnight. You build toward it. One dungeon, one champion point, one mythic, one monster set, one research timer, one step at a time. So, starting over isn't the end of the world. Some of you watching this might be starting on PC after years on console. Some of you might just be making a new account. Some of you are returning after taking years off. I've been there. When I moved to PC, I had nothing. No champion points, no gear, no gold, no mythics, nothing. Now, only a handful of months later, I've already built an account that honestly rivals and in some ways surpasses what I had before. Not because I found some hidden shortcut, and not because I got lucky, but because I followed the same roadmap I've shared with you in this video. I stayed consistent, I stacked my progression, and I always had an end goal. I knew exactly where I wanted to be, and I knew exactly how to get there. And you can do exactly the same thing. The biggest lesson I can give you, if you take one thing away from this guide, make it this. Do everything with a purpose. Every dungeon should move you closer to your goal. Every sky shard should move you closer to your goal. Every lore book, every daily, every piece of gear, every champion point, every mythic, every research timer, every single thing you should do should have a purpose. That's how experienced players progress so quickly. Not because they're playing more, but because they're wasting less time. So, my final thoughts on this is that ESO is one of the biggest games I've ever played. It can feel very overwhelming. It can even feel confusing. And honestly, sometimes it's going to feel like there's an endless mountain in front of you to climb. There will be days when you're tired of farming. Days when you're sick of running the same dungeon over and over. Days where you're wondering if it's even worth it. And that's normal. Every veteran player has been there. The difference is, they kept going. Not because it was easy, but because they knew what they were working toward. That's why I started this video by telling you to figure out what kind of player you wanted to become. Because once you know your destination, every step has a meaning, every grind has a purpose, and before you know it, you'll log in one day, open your collections, look at your champion points, your mythics, your monster sets, your gold, your builds, and realize you made it. If this guide helps you out, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let me know down in the comments what class you're starting with, or what parts of the game you're struggling with. I'll read the comments, and if enough people have questions about a specific topic, I'll make a dedicated guide for it. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next video. Deuces.